Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Soul Survivor podcast. I am your host, Dylan Bird, along here with my co-host, Ryan Winthrop. Look, I screwed up that intro a little bit. It's been a long time. It's been almost 3 months since we have podcasted. I can't contain the smile on my face right now. Look, man, we've been saying for all summer, all this summer, all winter, all off season, last summer after Winners at War, we've been saying the moment we hear season 41 cast coming out, we are going to podcast. Finally, we have cast info, and I cannot be more excited. The season is just 3 weeks away. How are you doing, Ryan? It's been a while.
Dylan, I am doing great. It is so glad to be back after not only 2 months of recording, but also a year and a half of new Survivor. I didn't think I was going to make it here tonight. I had a monster that was chasing me throughout my house, and I knew that if I didn't devour it, it was going to devour me. So I'm very glad to have made it here tonight.
Yeah, man, dude, it's just crazy. It's like, it doesn't even feel real. Like, it's one of those things, you always were looking for new info, always, knew like, eventually season 41 is going to get here. We never knew when it was going to come. And look, we're finally here. I can't be more excited. All these ads we got coming out. We're going to talk about a lot of things tonight. So I sent a link in the comment section. And if not, you could just go and search on Dalton Ross's Twitter account to pull up the article that he wrote. But he does his normal cast article where all the bios come out. It says their ages, where they're from, occupation, and then ask them a bunch of questions. We are going to go over that one by one, each person in the cast. I will share my screen if I need to, but I'll just advise you to follow along with the article. But we'll do a good job if you're listening to it and not watching. We'll do a good job of just describing everything that we're talking about. So that, again, if you're not watching the video and you're just listening to the audio, then you'll be able to follow along just fine. And basically what we're going to go one by one through each cast member. Really excited for that. And then we're going to get into, after all this new stuff about the game, as Ryan has already alluded to, Jeff keeps talking about this monster. Obviously, we've spoken in the past. We're getting a shorter 26-day season. And a lot of things are going to be changed up, and we know that. So we'll get into that later as well. Anything you want to say, Ryan, before we get started here?
I think what I'm the most excited about, obviously, is a new season and new content, new blindsides and everything. I'm just looking forward to meeting these 18 new faces, because not only have we not had Survivor since May of 2020, we haven't had a new cast since the season before, since Island of the Idols. So it's been even longer, 2 full years, since we've added to our Survivor family. I think the current count that I have, Dylan, is we have over 590 people who have played this game. So we're going to crack the 600 mark, and I'm very excited to meet all of them.
Yeah, no, I mean, especially after we spent all this time, ranking survivors, talking about which guys we want to come back, which guys and girls we want to see come back, all these former contestants. It's just crazy that, we're adding to this family of survivors that we have. And look, I'm excited to, introduce some great new players here. Really excited. Should be a lot of fun. All right. So we're going to get started here. Dalton Ross's article. I'm going to go through the bios one by one. The first player that we have here introduced is Sydney.
Yes, Sydney, go for it.
Oh, yeah. So I'm just going to give some info for those who are just listening. Sydney originally from Los Angeles, now a law student in Brooklyn, New York, 26 years old. So I'm just going to read down like some of the categories here of stuff that Dalton asked these players. So he goes, hobby, 3 words to describe you, pet peeve. What is the accomplishment you're most proud of? What is something that we would never know from looking at you? Who is your hero and why? Which past Survivor will you play the game most like? And why do you believe you could win Survivor? So again, I'm not going to read through every single answer here for every single person. Otherwise we'll be here all day. I'm just going to point out the things that to me stood out. And, I mentioned a question, which past Survivor will you most play the game like? And that is something that I look at very intently, and not the way that you would think I look at it. Like, I don't look at it if somebody says Tony, I'm not being like, oh, this person's going to be Tony. For me, that's a red flag, because if you say that you're going to be Tony, if you say you're going to be Russell, if you say you're going to be Boston Rob, that's, in my opinion, that's a problem, because we already know that there's never going to be a Tony again. There's never going to be a Boston Rob. There's never going to be a, Kim Spradlin. Like, all these players are so great. So unique. It's just like to have your expectation that you're going to be like them in my opinion, it lacks social awareness. So for me, I'm looking for kind of off the map things and like, interesting that you would compare yourself to this person. To me, it shows self-awareness if you name someone interesting. And one thing that stands out with Sydney here is she says that she will play the game most like Natalie White. She was able to, and then she goes on to say she was, quote, she was able to assess her place on her tribe and in her alliance while consciously nursing Russell's ego. Her social awareness is something that I admired. For somebody to compare yourself to Natalie White, that is a type of awareness that I think is very impressive. Obviously, Natalie White is somebody who has never returned, somebody who is not considered a top tier winner at all. In fact, a lot of people think that she shouldn't have won the game. Obviously, not going to get into that. Obviously, every single winner deserves their credit. But for her to name somebody as under the radar as Natalie White, in my opinion, it speaks volumes. She clearly has knowledge of the game. Clearly, she's going to go for that social game. And that, to me, was very impressive. Also, she says she speaks 5 languages, so obviously English, and then Spanish, Italian, Portuguese, French. Sydney is a law school student. Immediately from all these things off the bat, I'm pretty confident that I like Sydney's chances going forward here. She seems to be very well-rounded and very self-aware. Also seems to have, just kind of everything needed to succeed in Survivor. That's my first take here.
Yeah, no, I like a lot of what you're saying. Before I share my thoughts, do you hear an echo?
No, I'm good.
You're good? Okay. I was going to say, if we can, do you want to flash up their pictures on the screen, or is that going to get too complicated with the screen share? We don't have to, but just so people, in case they haven't seen the cast,
yes,
they can just...
Yes, I will get a screen share going right here.
Okay.
But while I get that up, you could go on of what you were going to say.
Yeah, no, I think obviously Sydney, like you said, she's a law student. She seems very, very bright. Also, I not only read the Dalton Ross article, I read Mike Bloom's Parade article, and then on YouTube and on Instagram, there were a couple of short videos I watched. So I got to actually see them speak. Because for me, another thing that I look at is obviously you can have a great bio, but if you come across very either bland or very, uninteresting, or you come off way too confident and fast in your videos, how is that going to relate if you're talking to someone on the island? So the bios can be an A+, but you have to also come across personable in the videos. So Sydney, yeah, I think 26, pretty good age. I always feel like for me, one thing I look for is also your age, because being the oldest is obviously a disadvantage, but I think also being the youngest is another disadvantage because you haven't had a lot of life experience. You can get duped, you can get deceived, and you just haven't had that background to kind of deal with different things that might arise. Again, I said before, Sydney seems very, very bright, obviously very intelligent. One thing that I picked up on her, my only red flag, you actually said it when you said you feel confident about her chances so far. She came across as very confident. Not only is that one of the words she says to describe her, but in her video, Dylan, in case you didn't see it, she says that I can turn down my amazingness to be the best, but not be the best. So she knows that she can't be the front runner in the race, but I'm not sure how well she can turn it down. To me, she could either be a front runner and go far in this game, like Christian says, where she can make the merge, or maybe she doesn't win. She also could be a pre-merge strong boot, like an Natalia from David versus Goliath, or like a Chelsea from Island of the Idols, or maybe even like a Molly from Island of the Idols. So I think that there's the potential for Sydney there. However, I just worry that her confidence and how intelligent she is might seep through. So she's got to keep that in check. I think like Alan Ball once said, Dylan, I'm not crazy, I'm confident. So let's see if she can turn down the confidence.
Yeah, I think you make a very good point about being confident, but there are some others that I'm much more worried about in that category than her. I think if you succeed in Survivor, you have to have confidence, but it's just to what point is that confidence going to show through? And to me, amongst first impression here, that did not bother me really for her, but it did for some other people. But we're going to move on here to Danny McCrae, 33-year-old ex-NFL player from Texas. There were a few things that shine through here, in terms of Danny. So first of all, he went back to school after he finished in the NFL and got his MBA. That is pretty cool. But one thing that made me laugh at his bio is the fact that his first pet peeve is lying. Good luck, Danny. That's what I have to say about that. And again, it doesn't mean he's not going to succeed in this game. But obviously, if somebody's pet peeve is lying, then you're probably going to have a tougher time, especially when you're getting lied to constantly. So I'm curious to see how he adapts, considering he put that as his first pet peeve. Also, lack of accountability. I mean, these are all things that could, annoy someone very easily in Survivor. So I am curious if he's going to be, somebody who gets very easily annoyed by this stuff, or this is just he's talking strictly his actual life and is going to put a lot of this aside once, he does play the game. Also, he says he's going to try to play most like Ben, which is, I think that's interesting. Kind of like a random, obviously Ben won the game, but it is a random person to compare yourself to. He says he would be seen as a strong physical player, and also liked how Ben quote unquote outworked everyone on the tribe. So look, I do expect Danny to be a physical asset to whatever tribe he's on immediately. We'll see if he could adapt to his pet peeves and really put those aside for this game, because he's gonna have to do that.
Yeah, ex-NFL player Danny, safety for the Cowboys. I think also Alan Ball was a safety as well. I think Survivor likes their defensive players as opposed to the offensive players. But no, like you said, right away, biggest red flag, if you know how to read these bios, is lying. Not great for a game of Survivor of manipulation and deceit. Listen, that will make him a very good alliance member. If he goes to his tribe mates or a few key people and says, I will be an ally, I'm not going to turn on you, think like a Ken from Millennials versus Gen X, he's a good ally. That being said, he would be a bitter jury member if you turn against him. And yeah, he's not going to be a super big threat strategically. So I just wonder how well he'll fare in the game. Again, he can make it very far if he's a great alliance member that's not going to lie or bend, but can he really outwit other people? That's something we need to look out for. I do think he'll make the merge. Obviously, being as fit as he is, I think he'll be an asset to his team unless they want to take a shot before the merge. I think the key thing here to figure out is that there are going to be 3 tribes when we start the game. So, if you get rid of some of those strong players early on, you're going to be at a massive disadvantage in the pre-merge and you're going to lose your numbers. So I think that Danny will stick around for a while. Playing like Ben, I personally feel like that's not a great thing. I mean, Ben obviously, listen, Ben knows how to find idols. Ben is very physical and can win challenges. So I'll give Ben the credit for that. But if you're saying, I admire how he had his back up against the wall, I really hope, Danny, that you don't want to have your back up against the wall, because then you're going to really be struggling to get from round to round. And I think it's like you said earlier, actually, with Sydney saying Natalie, I also do agree with you that you have to look for who these people are saying. If they're saying that, oh, I'm not like anyone else who's played this game before. We've had a couple of those people in this cast. That to me says you're either a new fan or you are a recruit. Not always a great sign there. And yeah, to your other point, if you say you're a Parvati, you're a Tony, you're a Rob, there are only one of those players and you're not going to replicate it. But I'm curious to see how Danny does. The last thing I would say, Dylan, is that we always have the athlete curse to consider. So can Danny finally break the curse of the athletes?
Yeah, I am curious to see that. Now we're going to move on to Liana Wallace, age 20. So there's, first of all, one thing I did realize before I get into Liana here is there's a lot of very young people in this game, which should be interesting. Definitely, and we're going to talk about how the game is changing per Jeff Probst, and they're definitely leaning towards the younger demographic. So I think this is intentional. And like Jeff said, it's a new era, so it makes sense for them to go younger. But Liana here, age 20, college student. And a few things that stood out to me about Liana is, so she says that she was invited to perform a spoken word for Congressman John Lewis. Obviously very, very cool. So clearly somebody who's very good with words, good speaker. And then another thing is, she did what exactly what we said that we don't like seeing from people in these bios. She said she compared herself to Tony, but she said she would hope to play the game most like Tony, which is kind of like not like really comparing yourself. It's like you hope to play. Obviously, everyone hopes to play a game like Tony, but then she adds in here at the end that she really valued somebody like Elaine's people skills. I think that's very important. Obviously, Elaine had a type of gift in season 39 where she was like best friends with everybody, like that type of person. So I do respect the fact that she has that kind of awareness. What do you think of Liana? Nothing else in particular really stands out here, but I'm wondering if anything in particular stood out to you.
Yeah, I mean, this is just weird to me, Dylan. She's not the only one, but we have a couple of people who are 20 and 21, so they were born after Survivor had aired. So we're finally in that next generation of players, which is very shocking and baffling to me. I mean, I knew that we were in a new era, but I just never, when I was a younger fan, I never considered we would eventually have people on who were younger than the show itself. So it's just very weird to wrap my head around. But back to Liana, I think she definitely has potential from what I'm seeing. You pointed out her poetry background, the spoken word for John Lewis. So she clearly can put together a well thought out essay and a well thought out case for herself if she can make it to the end of this game. I'm not sure if that's something that the others will pick up on, but I feel like if she gets to the end, she can explain her game. We always talk about someone like Amanda Kimmel, who's a great player, but couldn't accentuate her game, and she couldn't, defend what she did. So I feel like if Liana can own her game at Final Tribal Council, she's a big threat there. She is young. And like I said, I think that being young is like a double-edged sword, where obviously you're young and you're fit. However, you haven't had the life experiences to really, deal with a lot. So I wonder how she'll do in this game. The only other thing I would say is your other point about Elaine, where she wants to focus on the authentic relationships, and based on who she is and her background, she thinks that she can be overlooked and undervalued, which is a very great thing in this game to lower your threat level. Adam Klein talks about all the time how in this game, the best players are those who can manage their threat level. Like if Tony can manage her threat level, anyone can do it. So I feel like if she knows that she'll be overlooked and undervalued, she can use that to her advantage. So I think Liana has potential.
Right, I do agree with that. Also, one thing here that I missed when I was first going over this is that she spent a portion of her childhood in Tokyo and Singapore. Having different backgrounds is definitely good for this type of game.
Yeah. Can I say one last thing, actually?
Yes, go for it.
This is a quick aside note, because we're focusing mainly on, who they're going to play like and a couple of other factors. I do want to get back to the pet peeves for 1 second, because a thing that I saw a lot, and I don't know if you noticed this, why did like 4 or 5 people say their biggest pet peeve is loud chewers or people that chew it? Did you see that? A lot of people had the same pet peeve. And granted, I think it's also not great when people chew loud or chew with their mouth open, but for like 4 or 5 people to have that same exact pet peeve was pretty weird to me.
That is pretty funny. And look, it shouldn't be a problem because they will not be eating often. but
they're at a lack for food for sure.
Yeah, but what I was going to say is growing up in different areas of the world could definitely help your ability to adapt fast. So I think that will help Liana in this game. Now, moving on to Brad, 50-year-old guy from Wyoming, rancher. Immediately off the bat, we say this is going to be a guy who is going to work hard around camp, a guy who is going to definitely help at the very beginning on day one, build that shelter. This guy has lived a interesting life, as he says. He is a private pilot, enjoys flying, and nearly died from rattlesnake bite. Has been blown up by a propane tank, and likes to live life on the edge. Look, I always love listening to these wild stories. Gave a lot of very short answers. Says he will most play the game like Boston Rob. We don't have the same personality, but his thoughtful, strategic play is how I see myself playing. Very simple type answer there. Again, mentions that, he has good social skills, but also typical rancher, meaning he's hardworking, common sense type guy. I don't have a lot of thoughts for Brad, except the fact that we get a lot of these types of people in multiple seasons. It seems like people who, work, on a farm or a ranch every single day. And, those people will have no problem adapting to Survivor-like conditions. That's for sure.
Yeah, he likes to live life on the edge. Hopefully he doesn't mean the edge of extinction. But yeah, that was so weird to me when he says, I think I can play like Boston Rob, but we don't have the same personality. Like, do you know how much of Rob's game is entangled in his personality and how he commands the room? Like, hey, Brad, you're going to do this. So like, I'm really curious to see what Brad does. Christian said in the chat that he could be a control freak. I definitely got a similar vibe when he says that he just hates a lack of initiative. I really hope he doesn't go too old school and he gets put on a 6-person tribe with a couple of youngins and he's all about building the shelter and he gets left behind right away. So not great signs for Brad, in my opinion, right away. He could surprise us. He's also very tall, Dylan. I saw his video. He says that he's 6'5". He's a big guy. The picture may not show it, but he's tall. I guess I would say just my final thought is not a ton here. I think we've seen a couple of ranchers or farmers like Brad before. I feel like typically they make it usually pretty far in the game. Oh, maybe there's someone who's loyal. There's somebody who, won't be trying to scheme behind your back. So I feel like Brad, I'm not saying he could be a pre-merge boot. However, if he really drills down on the lack of initiative and gets in people's faces, he could go pretty early. So we'll see.
Yep, I'm in agreement with all of that. Not much else to say here. Moving on to Erika, another Canadian contestant, 32 years old, currently lives in Toronto, originally from Niagara Falls. So a couple of things here is that, she says that, so she had an answer here that I thought was extremely interesting and seemingly weirdly confident. And it definitely gives off some type of personality that I don't know. It's going to depend who she's on her tribe with, whether something like this works or not. The question was, what is something we would never know from looking at you? She says, people are always surprised by how smart and articulate I am. I'm quite smart and figure things out quickly. I'm also quick-witted, and those who get it are pleasantly surprised. Those who don't have no clue what they're missing. People also don't believe I'm 5 feet tall because my vibes make me seem 5'3".
Whoa.
So, okay, few things here. Immediately off the bat, that says to me she's going to be a very talkative person, and she's going to have to take that personality and vibe with the rest of her tribe mates. And hopefully that's not something, she's not on a tribe where that's something that would clash. So I just thought that was an interesting and very confident answer to give. For sure. That was my first reaction to that.
When you said, I'm not going to lie, Dylan, when you said that there was a comment in here that I reacted to, that wasn't what I thought you were going to say. I thought you were going to go with the past survivor comment. And she says, I'm going to play like Brenda on the outside, Todd underneath. Brenda, because she was physically strong, socially aware, and not afraid to show her teeth. Take out your teeth. Oh my goodness. That had to be intentional. I'm like, if that was just an accident, wow, because that had to be a Brenda Dawn reference, which I loved.
That is hilarious. It really is.
By the way, going back to the whole thing about the pet peeve with the people, a lot of people saying the chewing with your mouth open. A lot of people said Todd Herzog. I have never in my experience reading cast bios in all these years seen this many people reference Todd, which is a great poll. If you're mentioning Todd already, you get a couple thumbs up in my book. I mean, I feel like Brenda and Todd is an interesting comparison. I know from seeing some interviews with Caramoan people, obviously Brenda on the TV edit looks, pretty strong on the outside, but I think we didn't see a lot of Brenda in Caramoan because she was very, I heard she was like very sad all the time. She was missing her boyfriend. I think she was just more strong and fierce in Nicaragua. But anyway, I really like how she wants to play like Todd and, really, again, she's a communications manager, so I think she could communicate her game pretty well. But she also, to your point, might be very talkative, so hopefully she can reel it back in. From the videos, she did seem pretty fun, and I thought it was also interesting how she said that people are surprised with how smart and articulate she is. Like you said, maybe it's because she says she's 5 feet tall. She does have some purple hair, so maybe people think she's more offbeat or more quirky than she actually is. So again, I feel like a couple other people, Erika definitely has potential. So far, so good, I would say.
Yeah, and then another thing she says, why do you believe you could win Survivor? She says, quote, I've been manipulative since before I knew what manipulation was. I relentlessly pursue my dreams. The great thing is no one would expect it because of my youthful face and small stature. I can make it to the end, and I'm confident in my ability to advocate for myself at the final tribal. So like she's very intent on, being the Todd, being the social player, being the player who controls the game, but not exactly outwardly, maybe appears to be more of a friend while she's really being, manipulative and has control of things, and then is able to explain that well at the final tribal council. So I think we have an interesting character on hand here at Erika, definitely with some potential. Now, and again, I do want to point out what you said about Todd. A lot of people mentioned Todd in their comparison, and that is definitely very interesting for sure, given that he played in season 15. Now we're going to move on to Jarius here, another 20-year-old from Oklahoma City, another college student. Jarius was someone who stood out to me for sure in the answers, and I'm not sure if I can give a exact quote in these answers. It's just like you could just tell when somebody in these answers is very well-rounded, and that is something that I think Jarius is. He's somebody who is definitely a fan of the show. He says his hobbies, obviously Survivor, and then working with kids, pediatric nursing, and athletics. So this is somebody who's very well-rounded. He's used to dealing with people, and he's also very athletic. I'm pretty sure he describes, yes, he says he's a 2-time state track champion. So look, this is a guy who's very athletic and clearly has people skills. Says he volunteers at the local children's hospital because pediatric, quote unquote, pediatric nursing is what I want to do with the rest of my life. Those kids are absolutely my heroes. To know and see what they go through hurts, and yet they still have a smile on their face. Why would I, somebody in perfect health, spend so much time being angry at dumb stuff like bad weather, girls, or no milk in my fridge? I'm so much more privileged than they are. I will always have a smile on my face, a laugh on the way, because why not, right? So first of all, this strikes me as somebody who is not going to get angered easily, which I absolutely love. That is a major thing about Survivor is, obviously some guys get very angry easily, and that's not good. He seems like somebody who probably that won't happen to. He also compared himself to, listen to this, Fabio was one of the people he compared himself to. Now, again, he does have Parvati in there, which we think is, lofty, but he explains why Fabio, he says, I would love to have, quote unquote, I would love to have Fabio's ability to be underestimated, which I believe is the best thing he could be in Survivor. He also says he wants to use Jeremy's shield management. Look, this is something that I think that Jarius has a great bio here. I think that, again, his social awareness to feel like he needs to be somebody like Fabio who could stay under the radar and well liked, extremely important. Also, he has an interesting quote here. When asked, why do you believe you can win Survivor? He says, I've had my hand in every clique with the jocks, the band kids, the musical theater kids, popular kids, rappers, academic kids, ROTC kids, quiet kids, and even the teachers that love me. Even now, I have a great relationship with the president of our college. I have the it factor that some people just have. I think JT had it, Kim Spradlin. Now I have it too. Look, I'm a big fan of Jarius immediately. He's someone that stands out to me. I think that his understanding of what it takes to do well in Survivor seems beyond his years. And I'm excited to watch him play. What were your initial reactions? I know I went on and on there, but there was a lot.
You're fine.
His answers were long, and I felt like there was a lot to touch on.
Well, not as long as the next person we're going to get to, but no, seriously, I love this guy so much. I think it's pronounced Jarius, like Cyrus with a J. I'm not totally sure. We'll have to see on the show. I also think
I did. My bad. I switched the I and the R in the pronunciation. That Jarius, yes, that is my bad. I apologize to him.
It may not even matter, Dylan, because in one of his videos, he said I'm JD. He might be going by JD, so we'll have to see.
Okay.
Anyway, I really like this guy. In the video I watched, when you meet somebody, whether it's in person or in these bios, and you immediately smile and you can't help from smiling. Out of everybody that I looked at so far, we're on person number 6. Right away, he was the first one that made me just smile from seeing him. The way he talks, he comes off as so friendly and so engaging with people. And maybe I'm biased because I also was a tour guide at college and he's a tour guide as well. That speaks a lot to your people skills and how you communicate and how you present to an audience. I got great vibes from him, and I have to eat my words, honestly, because I said earlier, if you're 20, you may not have had a lot of life experiences. You can't deal with, what a 30-year-old has gone through. Maybe they've had a lot of hardships. I was floored at how much Jarius has done in his life between, being the tour guide and, being a kindergarten teacher assistant, but he also volunteers at his children's hospital. He's a 2-time track champion. His dad was in the military, so he's traveled all over the US and some all over the world. He really came off as energetic, but also intelligent. And I think if he has the it factor, it's one thing to say you have it, and it's another thing to have it. If you are another version of a JT or a Kim where people are going to flock to you and they're not going to want to target you because they all think you're going with them to the end, this guy could be a major endgame threat. Maybe I'm overhyping him. Maybe I'm just so in the zone, but I really got good vibes from him right away.
Yeah, I mean, one thing that he'll have to do is if he is entirely so likable, we'll see how easy or hard it is for him to hide his target. Obviously, we saw a player like Christian in David vs. Goliath was just so likable that everyone knew he would win if he got to the end, to the point where it didn't even matter. The first time he, didn't win immunity, basically, he was going to be in trouble. Obviously Christian, found some idols to, make it a little bit further in the game, but Ultimately, he was one of the people that was never going to get past a certain point because of how likable he actually was. So we'll see if, like you said, JD, if that's what we're going to call him. We'll have to find out once the actual season starts, or whatever another interview is released with him. Gonna have to see what happens there. But again, I think that there's a lot of potential here for him, and I'm really excited to watch him play. We're gonna move on now to Eve. Is that how you pronounce it, or Evie? Do you know?
I think it's Evie. I think it's
Evie.
Evie.
I need some work on my name pronunciation, but it is what it is. All right, 28 years old, originally from Westchester, New York, now lives in Arlington, Massachusetts. PhD student. Now, one thing that I saw a lot of people on Twitter talking about was that she says her pet peeves, men, not all men. I cannot stand machismo or mansplainers. Anything like that drives me insane. I deal with a lot of know-it-all male energy. It's a lot. And then basically goes on and on and on about that. So I know people were like kind of thinking that was hilarious on Twitter. And she was one of these people who gives very, very long.
It's a long bio.
It's a long bio, long answers. Somebody who seems like she's going to talk a lot. Obviously, she mentions Aaron in China, which we all know. And she mentions Todd again. So obviously a big fan of the show. Mentions that she wants to, be like Natalie in the fact that she does a really good job of hiding her threat level and controlling the game at the same time and letting other people control. So yeah, I'm curious to know your first reaction to Evie because there's a lot to unpack here.
Yeah, I agree with you. Everything I saw on Twitter was the pet peeve men. Like that's the tweet. So, like that was it. But yeah, no, I feel like when it comes to these long bios, because I think I saw this on Big Brother this season, those who really have a very long bio, I feel like they could come off as annoying. I feel like maybe they can dial it back once they're actually on the show, but right away it screams to me that you like to talk a lot, so it could be something that is a knock against her. She obviously is this is a very intelligent cast, by the way. Like I just was shocked at a lot of the occupations we had. She's a PhD student. I think the video said she's getting her PhD in human evolutionary biology. So she is very intelligent. I feel like if she gets put on a tribe with someone like a Brad, someone who is going to mansplain about the shelter and going to be being all macho in terms of, building the shelter and getting things done, they're going to butt heads. And I feel like if, let's just say her and Brad are on the same tribe and it's only a 6-person tribe, there's very few places to hide. She could go far or she could go out very early. I'm leaning towards her going out early, but she could surprise me. I will give her one positive, though. Obviously, a Todd mention is always great, but I liked how she said in one of her answers that she wants to stay close to the center of power. She doesn't want to be the shot caller. She wants to be the number 2. And I feel like if she can constantly shift and if a new power player arises and she can become the new number 2, we can see if she's a great player because she can avoid being the next number 1 and she can keep staying at like a number 2 or 3 and she can keep skating by. I think she could go far potentially, but I worry, first thoughts from the bio, she could be out early.
Yeah. I'm honestly, it's going to just depend on who she aligns with and who's in her tribe. I think that's going to be a major deal breaker or help to her, depending on what that is.
I mean, you're right, though. Luck is a big factor. I know a thing that we see all the time is luck is a big part of Survivor, and those who kind of discount luck, you're not really understanding the game. I mean, Tom said it to Russell at the Heroes versus Villains finale, where it's like, this game is like a third strategic, a third physical, and like a third luck, because there's a lot of luck. If she gets put with the wrong people right away, she could be out early. So we'll have to see.
Yes, I do agree with that. Mm-hmm. Now we have Ricard, 31 years old, from Washington, flight attendant. One thing that I actually saw is that he is friends with Kelly Wentworth, which is interesting. I did see this on social media the other day. So look, that'll be interesting to see. Maybe he mentions it on the show. Maybe he doesn't. I'm kind of curious to see, honestly. He sees somebody, Ricard seems like somebody who is, again, very, how do I describe it? He's going to be like pretty good at understanding people. And the reason I do think this is he says he's deaf in one ear. He focuses a lot on reading lips, fluent in American Sign Language. So kind of just, he's going to be very good at probably picking up body language, signals like that. I think that could be very, very helpful. he says he'll play the game most like Aubrey, which I think is a very thought out comparison. And again, Aubrey, somebody who had a lot of success in this game, says he believes he could win Survivor because he has the ability to show kindness, but also not take certain attacks and situations seriously. That feels like most players' downfalls. They succumb to the emotions and get voted out. I have awareness of my well-being while also being very observant of others and loyal, but not to a fault. So Ricard seems like somebody who's going to probably work his way through this game very socially. I think I think that his ability to read, like he says he could read people very well. I think that he does have potential because of that.
Yeah, I mean, he's a fan of Aubrey, but was that a little bit of a shade thrown at her where he says Aubrey Bracco, but win? Also,
Well,
I
don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I also have to give him credit because one thing, Dylan, that I'm not good at is reading lips. I suffer with that greatly. So listen, if he can read lips and we have a lot more of these live tribals where people are whispering and going around, he could benefit a lot from that, especially if he can also read body language. I think back to a couple of key tribal councils where people are whispering, but also people are reading where people's eyes are looking and who maybe they're motioning to. So he could be a powerful alliance member if you can get in good with him. I think he definitely has potential there. He does seem very social. I think he could be a good fit for the game. I do see him going pretty far. My one critique, if I had to say one, is he seems very, like you said, spontaneous. He will, like he says in his bio, he will move to another state on a whim, and he's very go with the flow, and he's not afraid to, make those jumps, which is very admirable. But in Survivor, that could make him either adaptable or can make him very wishy-washy. It can make him maybe jump to the wrong conclusions or jump to a wrong alliance, or I'm going to take a huge swing just for the sake of taking a huge swing, and it could backfire. So we'll have to see how it plays out.
Yeah, I think you do make a good point. Personally, I think that he'll be adaptable, but we'll also have to see whether he is, too quick to jump at a time like that or something like that. But interesting with Ricard here. Now we move on to Chantelle Smith, 34 years old, originally from Toronto also, which is the second person we've had originally from Canada. Now lives
more Canadians, yeah.
Yeah, now lives in Washington, D.C. With Chantelle here. So what we got is, so she is a pastor. Hobbies: running, improv, acting, comedy, and dancing. So first of all, if her hobbies are improv, acting, comedy, and comedy, those are three things that I say, okay, if you could act well, if you could improv well, that's pretty good. If you're funny, that's also pretty good. Make people like you. So I think that, I think that's a good start to her bio. I've been talking a lot off the bat here first, so I want you to get your first reactions in before I take most of it. We'll go for the second half. Yeah, you Ryan, you take for the second half here, you take the first impression because I feel like I've been talking a lot, so I'll give you that opportunity first, and then I'll react to what you have to say.
No, it's funny that you were saying that. I was counting as we were going, and I think she actually is number 9. So yeah, when we get to Nasir, who is next, I'm very happy to take the reins and give my thoughts first so you can react. I was thinking the same thing. Yeah, so she is a pastor/comedian. I don't think it says it in this article, but I know when Martin first showed the cast, she was a pastor/comedian. So obviously she sees herself as very funny. If you come across funny and likable, that will take you very far in this game as a jokester. So right away, good points there. She's 34 years old, and it looks like she's had a very difficult past. She's had a couple of demons in her life. She says, what would you not expect to know about me? That she was in a gang. So she's clearly been through a lot. I think in a game like this, and we'll see this with a couple other people, when you've been beaten down and when you've been dealing with a lot in life and you're going to have a tough game like Survivor, especially season 41, which is going to be even more physical and demanding. I feel like, no pun intended, she can weather the storm. She can really get through it. It says here that she'll play like Kim, Ty, and Parvati, which is an interesting mix. Again, always love to see Kim Spradlin mentions. And if she does have that high tolerance for pain and suffering, like I said, that would be very good for the season. And then in her videos, I also thought she had some good energy as well.
Yeah, I think that Chantelle has a lot of potential here. I know that you mentioned she has a tough past, or at least it looks like. That's something that obviously Survivor is a tough game. So if you have experience with tough experiences, if you have experience with tough things that have happened in your life, then I think that it could help you, able to deal with some of these situations. Obviously, the fact that she's funny should lead her to being a good social player. And she also happens to list 3 great social players as players that she is going to play, like Parv, Ty, and Kim, Ty, she says when it comes to idols, so I think that's funny. Clearly, she's looking to be aggressive in this game, and yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing Chantelle play.
Yeah.
Oh, you have anything else to add before we move on?
Yeah, no, I was gonna say one last thing, and then I'll start with the back nine of people. I was just gonna say, I'm curious to know if she'll tell people about her past, because I wonder if she really has a great story. Are people going to be afraid to let her get to the end, especially if she is funny and likable and she's a good speaker? She's a pastor. I'm wondering if she's going to share her past, or if she doesn't choose to share it because she might see it as a target on her back. I'm going to be curious to see how she brings that into the game, possibly.
Yep, I do agree with that. That is a good point from you. And now we're going to move on here to Nasir.
Yeah, give you more. Yeah, I'll give you more of a talking break. So I'll start with the back nine. So
then go for it. Go for it. We got a lot to talk about with Nasir here.
Okay.
He's somebody I'm excited to talk about. So yeah.
Okay, I'm quickly looking over his bio one more time. So I don't know if he said it here, Dylan, or if he said it in his video. Do you know how he learned to speak English?
I don't.
He learned English by watching Survivor.
Wow.
Which is a amazing story. He comes off also very fun and likable in his videos as well. If you haven't seen those, I'll send it to you, and I can try to post it in the chat also. But like his 3 words say, he does seem authentic, outgoing, and hardworking. I mean, this is a guy with his background where he says that and also this is the first South Asian male on Survivor from Sri Lanka. I think Natalie and Nadia also came from Sri Lanka, so it's great to see more representation there. I mean, when this guy says that he was living in a mud hut with no running water or electricity, and he didn't have a cell phone or technology until he was 18, and then he had to come to this country, and he's now raising a family, and he's a sales manager. Like, this guy has had a very packed life. And again, like I said with Chantelle, excuse me, if this is going to be a demanding game even more than normal, and he's been through these conditions all his life, he's going to be somebody who I feel like can, again, weather the storm. He's going to be out here where everyone is cramped up in the shelter and praying for the storm to end. He's going to be just out here dancing in the rain. I feel like he will do very well. He says that he's original and he won't play like anybody else. Again, that could be a red flag for me. He learned English from watching Survivor, so clearly he is a fan. So I don't want to say that him saying, "Oh, there's no one like me," that doesn't mean he's a fan. I won't say that. I just feel like he could have maybe pulled from one of the 590 people and said, I'm the most similar to X, or I'm the most similar to Y. If he can keep people entertained and do well in challenges and lower his threat level, I think he could make it far. I feel like he's a guy, and also I would hope that he's able to fit in and people can give him a chance and he can really do well in this game. I feel like my gut feeling is if he can get past the first couple of votes and he can make it to the merge, I think he could be a really strong player, possibly.
Yeah, I was blown away by his backstory. I mean, look, this could be one of the most unique and maybe even one of the most just wowing backstories of anybody who's ever been on Survivor. I mean, to live in a remote village where you have no technology until you're 18, no running water, an outhouse for a toilet, bathed in the river behind the house. He literally lived Survivor for 18 years growing up. And he even said that in, I think it was an interview. Like, these conditions will not be hard for him. Him going on Survivor, the challenge for him is going to be advancing himself in the game more so than the conditions. The conditions are not even going to be tough for him. At least it seems based on his background. And that's something that we haven't really seen before. There have been players who have obviously adapted easily to the conditions and players who haven't. But like nothing like this, where it seems like that he literally lived it for 18 years. So I think that he'll have no problem with that, which is great to see. Also does seem like a very likable person. So I think that Nasir is somebody who could do very well in this game. But again, if you're so, if he even, I think it'll be interesting to see if he tells people his background, because if he tells people that he lived Survivor or in conditions like Survivor for the first 18 years of his life, is that something that people will see immediately as a threat and go, wait, this guy is really going to have no problem going through these 26 days. We need to get him out because he could be a big threat. He could be a lot stronger than some other people as we go on in this game, just because, he's used to these conditions. So I think that is interesting. Also, just his success story, the fact that he came to the US from this, remote village he was in and became making multi-million-dollar sales for his company. I mean, taught himself English. It's really going to be Nasir is going to be somebody who's a must watch in the season. It's going to be very interesting to watch. I'm very excited to see it.
Yeah, he could be a bigger threat as the merge goes on. I could see him getting maybe targeted towards the end, but I think because of his background and what he's been through, I feel like will be a super big asset to his tribe early on, whichever of the 3 tribes has him. So I could see him sticking through the pre-merge possibly.
Yep, I do agree. All right. So now we have Jeannie here. Jeannie Chen, 46 years old, currently lives in Portland, Oregon, a grocery clerk. She had a very short bio, but from what I read and from what I watched, she appears to be somebody who I think is going to succeed socially in this game. Somebody who seems like she'll be very, very likable. People will want to be around her. People will see her as a loyal ally. That's just the way, that's the vibe that she gives me. She says that's 3 words to describe her: funny, kind, sensible. That is what I, even without looking at that, that's the kind of vibe I got from reading her answers. Short answers, but I believe maybe it was when I saw her in one of the interviews that she looked like she was just a very likable, outgoing person. They asked what accomplishment she's most proud of, and she says she got a Hustle Award one year at basketball camp when she was 15 years old. Pretty funny, as a 46-year-old woman to say. That's pretty hilarious in my opinion. So clearly she has a sense of humor as well. This is somebody who she says people trust her. No one will suspect her to be strategic. I think that these are all things that, I think could help her. And I do see her doing well in this game socially.
She missed her chance at Survivor 35. She could have been on the Hustlers tribe. Jeannie, or as she said in one of her videos, they call her Jeannie Machini. She has a lot of energy. I think Jeannie's going to be a very fun player to watch, no matter if she makes it far or if she goes out early. I like how she said that she plans to have a lot of alliances and options. I think the key here is, are people aware of those options? Like, you think of like a Nick Wilson where, Nick had the rock stars with Mike, and he had the thoroughbreds with Elizabeth, and then he had the Mason Dixon with Christian. And I think to my knowledge, many people weren't aware of all those little connections that he had. So if Jeannie can pull that off too, I think she could be a really good player. My only fear and I hate to say this, but I feel like I just go back to the precedent that's been set where she is, one of the older people on this cast and one of the older women. And if we go back to Survivor history, usually that type of player goes out early. Now, anything can happen. I think the last two seasons, Dylan, what they've taught me the most is I have to check my expectations at the door. Someone like Janet, I thought Janet would go out super early, and Janet made it to the final 5 and could have won this game if not for the nullifier. And then I thought, I'm not going to draft Tony in my Winners at War draft because Tony's going to go out early again. And Tony lowered his threat level and played one of the best games we've ever seen. So I don't want to go into this with the assumption that Jeannie will follow some past players like in her age demographic. So I'm hoping that she can break that tradition and she can also make a big run at this game.
Yeah, I do agree with that. Look, anything could happen, and if Winners at War didn't show it, I don't think we know it. I don't think anything could. But obviously, what we've seen in the last 2 seasons, I mean, anything can happen. So, all right, we got Xander here. Take it away with Xander, Ryan.
Yeah, there we go. Xander, our first player whose name starts with an X. I think we've almost completed the Survivor alphabet of first letter of your name. I'm not sure what the last letter is. I think it's Z. I don't think we've had Zane. Have we had everybody? I think we may have had all 26 letters now, but there we go. Anywho, Xander, 21 years old. He is an app developer, originally from Jacksonville, now lives in Chicago. Another young player like JD and Liana in that 20 to 21 range. So he also is one of those youngins who was either born after Survivor or was born when Survivor started. So that's, again, very weird for me to wrap my head around. Yeah, he has a lot of heart, determination, and passion. Clearly, he's somebody who I think, like he says in his bio in some of his videos, people perceive him to be different than he is. And I think he's going to try to be underestimated. He mentions a lot of those young surfer type guys in the past Survivor part of this bio where he talks about Jay and Devin. I like both the Jay and Devin picks. Both are great players in my opinion. I think he could definitely be underestimated. And again, I think in this 6-tribe format where, there's nowhere to hide, I feel like people are going to maybe want to keep him around for a couple of votes unless they want to cut him at the merge or maybe right before the merge. But I feel like if he can get through the pre-merge, I feel like he could be set up pretty well. I think it depends on also who he aligns with. And yeah, he does seem, like you said about some other people, he seems very worldly. He talks about in the the never know what something we wouldn't know by looking at you. He talks about his, he talks about Mandarin, talks about Kepler's third law, and Crab Nebula, and he also, I think, did some track as well. So I feel like he has also, like JD, accomplished a lot and knows a lot for someone who's very young. I think he could be underestimated, Dylan.
Yeah, I read an extended article with Xander today. I believe it was from Mike Bloom, and he, echoed a lot of the things that he already said, but he said he started his own company already, but he's not going to tell anyone that. I think he said that like you said, he said he's mistaked for a jock type guy. And that's how people perceive him, but he's really on the inside just a nerdy guy, and he's been like that his whole life. So I wonder how he's going to use that to his advantage. Maybe people will underestimate him, not think he's very strategic, but clearly he's going to be strategic. He started his own company, says he speaks fluent Mandarin. This is a guy who, like you said, is extremely smart, gets into a bunch of science in stuff that, we would never know about him. Also seems like he's going to be very athletic, says he competed in Nike Cross Nationals, which is quote unquote by him, the Super Bowl of cross country. And people were baffled that his high school team even qualified. He says it was very tough conditions for that. So I think that could have prepared him for something like this. I think the fact that he compares himself to Jay, Joe, and Devin, again, that's definitely not common people that you would hear compared to. So says, quote unquote, he says he would think he would play most like Jay, a fellow Florida boy, using physical powers to get me to the merge, but more importantly, making strong bonds, charming all, and secretly thinking hyper strategically. And by the way he's talking in this is pretty advanced for a 21-year-old as well. I do expect that Xander could be a big threat in this game, but maybe not to the people around him, and that's what could be the most important thing. So I do think that Xander's stock is high going into this game, for me at least.
I would say a pet peeve of mine, Dylan, that both he and I think Liana or someone else had is they don't say they'll be the sole survivor. They say they'll be the final survivor. So for me, you got to be saying sole survivor. He's using the wrong terminology.
Right.
There,
I did realize that. I am wondering I was wondering actually when I read this why people were saying that. I don't know why, but anyway, to move on here, now we have Sarah, who is another interesting character.
Yeah, Sarah, 24, a healthcare consultant. As a fellow consultant myself, although I do HR, I think it's a great role to have to see problems in a different way. Again, very smart. She went to MIT, but she's not going to tell people that she went to MIT. I think she could be underestimated as well. I think she also has a lot of potential. She wants to play like Kim, which is always a great choice if you can actually pull it off, but there's only one Kim Spradlin. I loved her answer, Dylan, where she says that she wants to make other people think the move is theirs. And that is one of the key things to have in Survivor. Obviously, we talked about mentioning your threat level, playing a well-rounded game, being adaptable, flexible. But if you can make a move, and kind of like Natalie Anderson once said, like if you can be in the passenger seat or be in the back seat, but you're kind of telling them where to drive and they think the move is theirs, that is such a great thing to have. I mean, that's one of the key things that's said in the book, How to Win Friends and Influence People. So I feel like if Sarah can pull it off, she'll be very successful in this game. Good first impressions. I just hope she doesn't get unlucky. I feel like we see a lot of these young women who are really good at the game and they have a lot of potential, kind of like a Kelly Wentworth in her first season, Dylan, and they get super unlucky and go pre-merge like Kelly or like a Rourke from Triple H or like
a Chelsea from season 39
or like a Chelsea. So I hope that she doesn't get unlucky, and I hope she can make it far, because I think if Sarah can play that strategic and social game that she's claiming to, she could go far.
Yeah, and one thing I think she really has going for her, now she's one person out of all the people who has stood out to me a lot. I think, again, because she's one of those well-rounded people. She even mentions that by looking at her, you would not think that she's as smart as she is. Again, she went to MIT. She says that she, works in engineering. She got to work directly on a lung cancer diagnostic device. And she lost her grandfather to lung cancer, so she's very proud that she was able to make a difference directly in this field. So clearly, she's very smart. She's working in the medical, engineering field. She says, quote, when answering the question, what is something we would never know from looking at you? She says, I have so many layers. Quote, I have so many layers. I come off as super sweet, but I am tough and have the biggest fighting spirit you will ever see. I am absolutely a force to be reckoned with, and I feel bad for the people who underestimate me. No one looks at me. No one who looks at me realizes how smart I am just by seeing me. I am young, but I've been through some tough things in my life and have learned how to bounce back from adversity. I think that if people underestimate her, I think she's going to do very well in this game. I hope that people don't catch on very early that she is really smart and maybe, a little bit more sneaky than people would exactly anticipate. Because like you said, if people are going to sniff that out early, she could end up getting unlucky. But I think that if she's able to fly under the radar, she could be a person who does make a lot of moves in this game.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
All right, we are going to move on now to David, who I have a lot to say about based on reading his bio. And go for it, Ryan. You could start us off here.
I have a lot. I think I have maybe not the most to say about David, but I have so many question marks on David. The very first thing I got to say, Dylan, is he going to be a David Wright or a David Sampson? Like, is this guy going to go far, or is he going to be the first boot? Like, this guy is intense. He's a neurosurgeon. He's 35. He is determined, passionate, and stubborn. And as he says, his pet peeve is being around incompetence. And I feel like if he gets stuck on the Dodo tribe of the season, he's going to lose his mind. He wants to play like Russell Hands. Also, I have to say, by the way, the assignment was to name a player or maybe two that you'll play the game most like. I think he name drops like 6 people in that section. He just keeps, he goes, Russell, Todd, Natalie, Sari, Wentworth. Like, he just keeps dropping people's names. So I'm not sure who he thinks he's going to play like. Like I said, I think this guy could go far. I think he could go first or second. I feel like it's not going to be in the middle ground. He comes up to me as someone who's going to play very aggressive, maybe like Russell-esque or like Tony-esque. But I feel like if you're not like a Tony, you become one of those clones of Tony who kind of goes off in a different direction. Everyone was like, oh, Joe Mena from Triple H is going to be like the next Tony, and Joe was his own guy, and he went out like I think 4th after the merge, like he was like the 4th jury member. But this guy wants to play an intense game. He wants to play like a similar aggressive nature like Russell, but he wants to be social. He also names drops Todd, which is really good. Dylan, what do you think about David?
All right, so I think from his bio and the way he's crafting answers, my immediate reaction is easy favorite for villain of the season. Now, the question is, the thing is that he will only be villain of the season if he's lasts long enough to become that villain of the season. And that, to me, is a big question mark because I don't know how long he lasts if he continues. So the way he crafted his answers, he believed that he kept mentioning he was a neurosurgeon, and to me that screams that he could be cocky, think he's better than everybody else. He says his pet peeve, my pet peeves revolve around people's incompetence, laziness, and lack of self-awareness. When you work an insane number of hours in a week, you just can't tolerate pure ineptness, which to me says, all right, like clearly he is thinking highly of himself, that he works a lot. He's a neurosurgeon. He can't deal with people who are annoying. That's problematic in Survivor because you're literally living with these people for now 26 days. But he at the same time says that he's had to process a lot of emotional stuff in the past. He mentions that, neurosurgeons have to do that. He says that he lost his father to brain cancer, which, led him to kind of becoming a neurosurgeon. So maybe he does have a soft side that we're just not seeing in this bio. But I think that he could come off as that cocky player or a villain. So I have no idea which way this is going to go. I think it's a complete toss up for him.
Like I said, it's one thing to say it. It's another thing to do it. So I can respect him saying, I want to play as hard as Russell did, but I want to have more of a social game. If you can do it, great. I think you can make it far. But if you come off as intelligent as you are and very intense as you are, it's not going to work out well. My final prediction, Dylan, is I could see him being, like you said, our villain, but our pre-merge villain. I could see him going out like a Natalie Cole or like a Bradley in Ghost Island where he's going to go out like maybe 6th or 7th, like right before the merge. That's where maybe I could see him go out possibly.
Yeah, I think that's a solid prediction. Now we move here to Deshawn. What do we have to say about Deshawn?
Deshawn, I like Deshawn a lot. Like JD, when I watched his videos, I had that natural smile. He made me smile right away. I guess it's just how he presents himself and how he comes off. He does seem pretty likable. 26, a medical student. So again, someone else who's in the medical field. His 3 words are charming, devious, and resilient. He does come off as very charming. And he says in one of his videos that he wants to be very personable, very charming to people's faces, but he'll give us a lot of devious stuff in the confessionals and behind the scenes. So I'm hoping he can pull off that nature. Hopefully, though, people don't catch on to, him playing, 2 sides in a way. His pet peeve is being told what to do. So kind of like I said earlier, where if someone like a Brad and an Evie gets put on the same tribe, but then they can clash right away. I just hope for Deshawn's sake, he's not put on a tribe where he's put with like a Eric or like a Brad where they're telling him what to do and he's not going to put up with it and he goes for one of them right away. So we'll see how Deshawn does. He had my favorite answer, Dylan, for the player section. He had my favorite answer.
Same. I agree with that.
The combination of a Suri and Wendell, I love it. I've been in this podcast, and if Hef ever comes back, we can argue again. But in my opinion, Suri is the best to never win. And if you want to incorporate Suri Fields in your game, automatic 10 points from me. And if you want to incorporate Wendell had a great social game and a great physical game and also a great strategic partnership with Dom. Maybe he sees himself as a Wendell, somebody who can find his number 2, technically his number 1, and they can work together as a twosome in this game and make it far. I think that's a great combination if you can be Serene and Wendell. Again, I got great vibes from him already. If I had to give one red flag, he might be a little too confident in his abilities and he could play sloppy if he tries to go hard, but I like him so far.
Yeah, I do agree. He also says, quote, let me find this. He says, I can, quote unquote, I consider myself an empath, and although I may not always appear to, I do feel other people's emotions, and I do feel strong emotions myself. I think I just do an above average job at concealing these emotions to not look vulnerable. That could possibly work in his advantage in terms of just like connecting with other people. So I do think he'll be a good social player in this game.
Yeah.
All right. Now we're going to move on to Tiffany. 47 years old, current residence in my hometown, Plainview, New York, which is very cool. Occupation, she's a teacher. So a few things that honestly stood out to me here. She says that she hates brushing her teeth before bed and never wash her face. That's straight up disgusting.
Okay. I'm sorry, I have to interrupt you. That shocked when I said that Deshawn had maybe my favorite answer out of this whole cast article. Tiffany had me the most shocked out of all the. I was like, number 1, why would you not do those things? But number 2, why would you be okay with saying that? I just keep going.
Yeah, and again, she gives very short answers, so I don't have a lot of immediate takes. She did have a longer article that came out today with Mike Bloom, and I did read that, and she says she actually got engaged while watching Survivor, which is interesting. And she says she's, a huge fan, has watched it for years, applied 4 years ago, and now she's here. So I don't have a ton to. Oh, she also says that she's dealt with a lot in her life, that she's had some medical scares. So I think that's interesting. She has a pretty good story. I don't have a ton of immediate reactions, except for the fact that I feel like she could be a motherly figure on this season, and or she could possibly just go out early. Like, I'm not really sure what to think.
Yeah, like you said, super short bio, so I don't have a ton on her. I did also read Mike's article today, and yeah, she has a very deep story, with a medical condition. So if anyone hasn't read it, I advise you to go check it out. It gets pretty deep. I feel like Tiffany, listen, like you said, she's from our stomping grounds of Long Island, so I would love for her to bring home another win, like a Tommy or a Tom. Maybe it's something in the T names, possibly. I just worry that she could be out early. I don't know. Maybe it's just something about, like what I saw in the videos, or that she says one of her words that to describe her is loud, all capital. She could come off as annoying, possibly. Again, like with Jeannie and like we'll see with Heather at the end, I just hope that she can beat the stereotype of the older woman on Survivor and she can make it far in this game. right away, I would, if I had to make a prediction right now, I would say early boot, but I feel like she could hopefully get in with a good group of people.
Yep, I agree. All right, now we have Eric here, who I believe is the oldest male on the season at age 51. But he doesn't look it, that's for sure. Which is good. He could, definitely fit in possibly. Basketball, golfing, reading, so like sports, probably like good athlete despite his age. He says that he would construct a hybrid playing style of Richard Hatch, Wendell Holland with a touch of Boston Rob. Interesting. So again, pretty short bio. Says he doesn't like when people are condescending. Characteristics of being slothful. So he does seem like another guy who's going to be pushing to work around camp. But we'll have to see if he actually tells people to do that or is just like, like he just doesn't like when people are lazy. He is a cybersecurity analyst, so probably a pretty smart guy, I assume. And yeah, again, not a ton to take out from his bio, but I think that if he's a cybersecurity analyst, he has some potential.
No, he is, again, very intelligent. He had some good energy in his videos. I have a couple of worries with Eric, and I hope he can prove me wrong. One worry is that because of his intelligence, he might come off as too smart or too controlling, and a couple young people on this cast are not going to like that. And number two, one thing that kind of scared me in his video, Dylan, was he was saying how this is a marathon, this is not a sprint, and I want to take this game, one day at a time, not 3 days in advance, and we got to keep the tribe strong early, and we got to just keep our group to the end. I think Eric would be a good player in season 1 through like 5, like early old school. That's my problem. I think Eric is an old school player who would do well back then. I think not only in late Survivor would he struggle, but in this new era where it's, as Jeff says, more dangerous, it's faster, it's super intense, you got to devour the monster. I worry he's going to be playing an old school game and he will get left behind right away. I do hope he can prove me wrong, but in this faster game in the new era, he could potentially struggle.
Yeah, I think I agree with you there. And now for, I believe, our last one, we have somebody who I saw a lot of people on Twitter were liking early, and that is Heather, age 52, from Charleston, South Carolina, a stay-at-home mom. What do you think of Heather from your first reaction here?
I think, like with Jeannie Machini, I think Heather will be fun. However, if she makes it far, if she goes out pre-merge, I think Heather will be fun to watch. I mean, she says in her bio here, where is it? I know I read it earlier, but I don't want to botch it. She said, what is something that we would never know about looking at you? I have a challenging upbringing. Okay, good. I have a passion for possums. Okay. I don't think I've ever met somebody who has a passion for possums ever. And I cuss like a drunken, sunburned sailor. I just hope for good TV. We can see Heather gets the merge. She goes on a reward, and kind of like Carl from David versus Goliath gets plastered on a reward, and we just see Heather just go off and have just like spill all the secrets, and then she. I want to see it, but no, Heather. I think she could be fun. As a player, I don't have a ton of hopes for her right now. I think she could be another pre-merge boot, but hey, she could make it far. I like how she said in her she had a very interesting past player section where she says, I'll play like a Rick Devens, which right away I was like, dun, 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 this just in, Heather, stay at home, ma. So, I mean, we'll see how she does. She name drops Tina Wesson, which is a big name drop. I feel like a lot of recent players would not name drop Tina. And the combination of a Lisa Welchel and a Chrissy Hoffbeck is a very interesting combination as well. So I really hope Heather can prove me wrong, and I hope Heather can go pretty far.
Yeah. My thoughts is she could be a very good social player, or she could also clash. It's going to depend on to what extent her personality is, and which we obviously don't know yet. I thought that her past Survivor name drops were very interesting. Lisa, Chrissy, Tina, all very interesting and good things to say. Why do you believe you can win Survivor? She says, quote, I'm sharp and observant, like an OCD observant. I'm surprisingly very strong and have a ridiculously high threshold for pain. I'm resilient. I'm daring but careful. I build strong relationships. I'm likable and entertaining. I listen and learn. I will be the person who remembers where everyone is from and what they love on their pizza. I know their stories. I'll know their stories, the kids, pets, etc. I may not like them all, but I have the ability to convince them that I do. I'll make people smile when they need to. I hope to make all feel included and important. Very important skill for those are very important skills for social. And I think that the fact that she knows that is so important. Like she's gonna, if she's really gonna connect to these people on a personal level, she could end up being the mom that goes far on the season. And I think that she does have potential because of that.
I forgot, Dylan, who I said this about earlier. I can't remember if it was like, I'm trying to remember if it was like Erika or if it was Chantelle. I can't remember who I said it about, but I said it about somebody earlier where I said she's someone, in my opinion, if she can make it past the first few votes, she could go far. Now, again, I don't want to compare her to like a Suri. I'm not saying that at all, but I'm saying like Suri is somebody who if you watch Survivor Panama, Suri was in trouble for the first 2 votes. On the older women's tribe, Suri was one of the names being floated. And then when they went to Kasaya and Lamina, she again was like one of the 2 options. So I feel like, just like with Suri, I feel like Heather is going to be targeted probably early, maybe because of her age or maybe she's not as fit as everybody else. But if she can make it past the first few votes, Dylan, I think she could do pretty well. I love what you said about she helps to make all feel included and feel important. That's such a great skill to have. Also, I think mentioned in how to win friends and influence people. And that's something that we see some strategic players lack. Like someone like a Shireen, we see that was her downfall in Cambodia, where Shireen's obviously very intelligent, big fan of the game, but she kind of makes Abby Maria feel excluded. And then Terry and a few other people swoop in, and then Shireen's out because they got Abby back. So I feel like Heather could hopefully do well, hopefully.
Yeah, I do agree with that. All right, so now that we are done going over the cast, obviously we've been on here for a while at this point, but I do want to quickly go over and touch upon what you said earlier, how we were going to talk about how, Jeff mentioned that some more things could change in the season. He did mention what those are. Obviously, as we said, he mentioned, mentioned that it's going to be 26 days, very fast pace. He keeps referring to a monster. I actually watched a video that Russell made yesterday reacting to that. And he said, I don't know if maybe there's something in the season that is actually called the monster, if there's maybe some kind of advantage or disadvantage or some twist. Or if he's just using that as a metaphor. Like, that's kind of interesting. Like, I think it is a little bit weird and interesting that he keeps name dropping monster. I don't know. A few things also that he said is that he's going to talk to the audience in the middle of the episode and give us information that the players don't know. So like, I guess like if like an advantage is about to happen, or a twist is about to happen, he will tell us what that twist is before the players know. So that should be interesting. I think it's just a way to honestly make it more interactive for younger people that are watching. Also, they will have the game with inside the game for the younger people, which for those people who have not heard means that they're going to have like riddles that kids could solve in the middle for quote unquote future Survivor players. So look, all that's cool. And I think it's just making things more interactive for the audience. I'm not sure if it's going to actually play an impact in the actual game, but it should be interesting from a viewing perspective.
Yeah, these are some interesting things that Jeff was saying. I think what I finally wrapped my head around, and it took me up until these articles to realize this. I think we all knew that Winners at War was season 40, and Jeff's even said during the season when those people lost at Edge of Extinction, when you close the book on this chapter and we're opening up a new chapter, I was like, okay, it's a new chapter, and we're going to see some similar things. Maybe obviously the break with COVID had something to do with this, but he says in one of his parade articles with Mike Bloom that Winners at War was designed to be the end of an era, and we have really felt that we got everything we wanted and we could have out of that version of Survivor. So we really are starting a new game. He says you can drop the 4, keep the 1. This is a brand new game. And I feel like it's going to be kind of weird for some older school fans like us, people who've been with the show for a long time, to kind of wrap our heads around this. But I really hope that it keeps the show fresh and exciting. And I'm okay with it being fresh and exciting. It's just as long as it doesn't, take away what Survivor is at its root, which is a social, complex game of strategy and manipulation. I feel like the game within a game could be fun. He says it doesn't have any impact on the game, but it could kind of connect directly back to the game. So maybe I don't know. Maybe this is something where it's like, okay, here's the scenario where I'm going to combine the game within a game and Jeff talking to us, because I didn't envision Jeff talking to us and breaking the fourth wall here, but maybe what he's saying is back in like Survivor 1, when no one knew what anything was, he would come in the middle of the episode and be like, this is tribal council. This is where you'll vote people out. This is tree mail. This is where they get mail. So I'm wondering if a scenario could be, okay, this is the legacy advantage. If players find this at the next immunity challenge, it will keep them safe either at final 12 or final 6. So I'm wondering if that's something that he might do. And to tie in the game within the game, maybe some of the puzzles will relate to some things that people will see in the game, possibly.
Yeah. I'm somewhat skeptical, and this could sound dumb of me to even say. I'm somewhat skeptical that the game is going to be completely different as much as he is hyping up to be. I just think that there's going to be new aspects that are added. I think they just need to sell a season in a way, and I think that they realize that they got a lot of younger fans. So I think a way that they are changing the game up is the fact that they're having it fast paced, because technically younger kids will normally have a shorter attention span. Like, I think the fact that it'll be less downtime will probably be more entertaining for kids like that. I think that, and again, this could all change once COVID ends and they can go back to 39. Who knows what's going to happen? But then also the riddles, Jeff Probst talking and engaging. This is all stuff to gear to younger fans, the younger cast. The fact that a lot of the cast is 20 years old, 21 years old. I'm a little bit skeptical on how different the game is actually going to feel. I have a feeling that, and again, he said something along the lines of, if you're expecting to see the same as we've seen previously, you're wrong, and you're gonna be very wrong. And I'm almost saying, like, all right, is he hyping it up that much? Like, to me, I think it'll still feel the same. I just think that it'll be very game focused, and very fast paced with a lot of twists. Probably, frequent vote outs. Like, I'm not completely sold that it's gonna be that different yet. For me, that's at least my opinion.
He says, Dylan, with the twists in the Us Weekly article, he says there will be some controversial twists. So I'm really hoping he's just trying to hype us up and he's not immediately trying to backpedal and be like, all right, give me a chance. You'll see what it's about. But like you said, I'm excited, but I'm a little skeptical. I mean, he even says, like, we do twists. And, whenever we do a twist that people don't like it right away, like people didn't like Idols at first, people didn't like Tribe Swap at first, but they come to love it. I feel like the jury's still out on edge of extinction, but I just feel like they're changing up a lot. And again, like I said, I'm okay with them taking big swings and risks because you're 41 seasons in, as long as you're keeping the core of the game at its whole. And as long as your twists don't screw over the people who play the best game. Like, for example, Edge of Extinction, it's a flawed, Jeff, when you're kind of rewarding people for getting voted out earlier because they can get more fire tokens, and someone like Yule has no tokens because he got voted out right before the merge. So it's like, as long as your twists add to the strategy of the game, like, I mean, I guess think like a less powerful Extortion, where that was super powerful, but that was an interesting type of twist. So I just hope that it doesn't fiddle with things too much, hopefully.
Yeah, I think that a lot of the twists will be new and different. That's what I think is going to be that. But I think that the ultimate game is going to feel the same. That's my prediction.
Yeah. I guess one more thing I would say is that, again, this is going to be a very fast-paced game. Jeff says in one of his Mike Bloom Parade articles that tribes are going to stay small throughout the season, meaning people have nowhere to hide. I'm fine with us starting with 3 tribes, and I'm fine with the first few votes being 3 tribes. I just worry, like, you have to have at least one swap in there, because if the tribe is dwindled down too much, it's going to get way too lopsided. I personally like 2 tribes more than 3 tribes, but I'm hoping that we don't lose some great talent because of the 3 tribes small format.
Yeah, I think that's a very good point. We'll have to see what happens with the tribes. He said the tribes are not going to be swapped as much. Like the tribes, like you said, will be whittled down. So that'll be interesting to see. And yeah, I'm excited to watch the season. We're going to see, hopefully from here on out for a while, we'll podcast every week. And I'm sure that by this time next week, we'll have some more info that we could talk about next week at some point. Don't know if next week will be on a Wednesday, but obviously once the season starts on September 22nd, we plan on being there directly after the episode. Look, maybe one of the next 2 weeks, we could even try and get a former Survivor player on to talk with us. Who knows? We could try to get some people on. Maybe we have to return to talk about things. So we'll have to see what happens in the next few weeks. I'm really excited for Survivor to get going on September 22nd. Obviously, like normal, we'll have our recap stuff right after the episode airs live on the East Coast at around 9 p.m. every Wednesday. And then also when we see fit, we'll also add another podcast here and there during the week in addition to the recap. So I'm excited for this season. It's going to be great to finally have new content to talk about.
Yeah, like you said, Dylan, we have a lot of great content planned. And I'm very excited for Survivor and everything that's going to come next. I think one last thing I'll say is that not only I learned this from our podcast tonight, but also from the articles. I've just learned to drop all of my expectations and prepare for a brand new chapter to start. I didn't think I realized it when we were talking. And I just think that after this break with COVID, they are trying to redefine Survivor. Because I want to just address Christian's question in the chat where he asks, so there'll be no new fire token, there'll be no fire tokens this season, and maybe they'll come back in 43. I may even go as far to say they may never come back. I mean, we also may not see returning players for like 4, 5, 6, 7 seasons. I feel like whatever we had predicted, Dylan, in this long off season of what could happen after the off season ended, that has all changed. I think they went back to the drawing board in this last year and said, how are we going to change up Survivor? And this is a brand new game. I would want to just quickly point out that
did they say that fire tokens are done for officially?
I never saw anywhere that they're done officially, but I have seen no press so far saying that they're in the season. I don't think they're in the season.
We'll have to see what happens. Yeah, I honestly don't know. Now, one thing you just mentioned is that the fact that we may not see returning players for a while. I think that is probably something that is probably true. I think that we could go possibly the next 4 seasons, 41 through 44, without returning players, and then maybe a 45 is where we first see it again. Just because I feel like they want to put some new players in this new era. Or we could be wrong and there could be 143. We just don't know about it yet. So I'm kind of curious to see what happens, but it does feel like they really are pushing this new era stuff.
No, I completely agree. I just know that when we were talking, I think in a lot of our offseason videos, we said, oh, we think second chance will for sure be like 42 or 43. I feel like now that we're in this new era and we want to see a brand new seasons of players get their chance, it may be a while. So I'm just going to be really curious to see, what happens. What I wanted to point out really quickly before we end the podcast is I think a big reason why they wanted to redefine the game. I heard this in one of Rob's podcasts where he does the top 40 countdown. This was number 7 winners at war. He talked about with I think it was Shannon and Taryn. They talk about that, this is 26 days instead of 39, and it's going to be physically demanding and a severe lack of resources. I think they see this show evolving kind of like, okay, we hated it EOE. We're going to keep the concept of like, how hard can you push yourself? How far are you willing to go in this game to go where it's deepest in yourself and pull it out? I think that's what they want to do. You think back to the log challenge with Ethan collapsing, and I think they really want to amplify that. So if they don't have EOE anymore, they want to say, fine, we're going to have a shortened season with harsh conditions, and can people beat the monster and weather the storm? So I feel like that's where the show is now heading. So.
Yeah, I mean, look, we mentioned that if they had log type challenges in the actual game instead of Edge of Extinction, that could have been something we loved to watch. So I am curious to see what happens, but I am excited to get the season rolling. This was a great podcast, great being back with new content, talking about stuff as normal. Be sure to like this video if you're watching right now. Be sure to comment. Be sure to follow us on Twitter, Instagram at Soul Survivor Pod. Be sure to subscribe to our podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify. Leave us a 5-star rating and review, and we will be back next week with some new content. So I'm excited.
Yep. Dylan, I am very excited, and I cannot wait to see what comes next.
Yes, and should we do our normal sign-off?
Oh, my goodness. It's been so long. I almost forgot. But yeah. All right. And thank you for being with us. We have nothing else for you, so grab your torches and head back to camp.
Good night.